I really don't want to talk about this. I really don't. This Here's the thing. This is a different format. If you have never seen my videos before, this is a different format because this is my first full TV season. I'm not going to go episode by episode because it would just take too long. But this is my first full season of television review, and God, there's so many. Here's the problem with it. It's very polarizing. I feel like those who hated it really hated it, and those who liked it really liked it. Um, and so I'm almost worried to talk about it and either say anything good or anything bad because I feel like someone's gonna rip me apart either way. So here's the deal. With this show, we're talking about She-Hulk, by the way. With this show, there's gonna be those who hated it, who hated it simply because it was a female-led show. Okay, there's going to be those who hated it just because of that. Then there are going to be those who loved it simply because it was a female-led show. And it could have been the worst show in all of history, but they're going to say that it was awesome because of that. And so you got those who hated it and those who loved it, and then everyone else who's stuck in the middle is going to get yelled at by both groups. So here's the deal. Here's the deal I will make for you guys. If you genuinely liked this show, good for you. I am glad that you liked it. If you genuinely found it entertaining and you liked it, great. I didn't. I hated it. So I am about to eviscerate this thing. But that's just my opinion. And if you don't agree with me, that's fine. That's fine. You're entitled to your opinion just like I'm entitled to mine. And if you don't ask me to apologize for the things that I view as being bad, I won't ask you to apologize for the things that you think are good, okay? So let's just all go about this with a calm perspective and an understanding that we are all going to have different views on this, whether politically charged or not politically charged. If you're like me and you were just hoping for a good show and an entertaining show and you didn't get that, I'm sorry, because I didn't find it entertaining. This show tried to be four things. It tried to be a comedy. It tried to be a superhero action series, which is, I mean, it's part of the MCU. It's going to be that. It tried to be a law show, and it tried to be a story about a strong, empowered woman. And in my opinion, if I'm being honest, it failed to be all of those things about 90% of the time. The comedy fell flat. I didn't think it was funny. There were a handful of times it got me to chuckle. There were a couple clever snide remarks, but by and large, it just wasn't funny. And there's nothing worse than bad comedy. There's nothing worse than saying something that you think is funny and then blank faces to all the people that you were talking to. I've been there. I think everyone's been there. Everyone said something that they thought was really, really funny, and that they were trying to be funny. You know, like they were like, this is going to get a bunch of laughs. And then it's just crickets and you feel so awkward and so bad. And then you're on the other side of that too, where someone says something that you know they think is funny and you don't laugh because you don't think it's funny at all. And then you're like, ooh, do we give a half laugh? Do we give, what do we do? It's very awkward and it's very cringy and we don't enjoy it. So there's nothing worse than watching something on television that market itself as a comedy and then is not funny. It's bad. And you know how I know it's bad? Because it was actually used in the plot for Joker. If you guys didn't see the standalone Joker film with Joaquin Phoenix, it was amazing. And there's a point in that movie where he's going and doing stand-up comedy and he tells a joke, and in his mind, we hear all the people, in his mind, everyone's laughing and everyone's having a good time, and he's really funny and he's really good at doing stand-up. And then later on in the movie, they show a clip of his stand-up, and it is awful. Like the punchline, they're just punchlines. They're not setups, or they're setups without punchlines, and he just stops talking for some reason. And it's everyone just being dead quiet. And that's a point in the movie when you feel the most sad for Joaquin Phoenix. And that was my feeling for most of this show, because I was just like, oh God, this is bad. Who wrote this? Not only that, but it relied a lot on fourth wall breaking, which just because you do fourth wall breaks does not mean that you're meta or funny by nature. It has to be good. It has to be worth doing. Um, and I just don't think that it really mattered or it really went into that. This is one of those things that was like, oh, she's breaking the fourth wall. And you almost didn't notice it. Like, it was such a quick transition. Tatiana Maslany was talking to someone and then immediately turned and was talking to the fourth wall. It was just weird. And I don't think it was Tatiana Maslany's fault. I think she did as good of a job as she could have done given the material. I think she bought into the material. I just don't think it was as good as the showrunners or the writers thought it was going to be. It it had a lot of meta humor, which again just didn't land. It wasn't as funny as I think they thought it was going to be. They used it for an exposition dump a couple of times, which, okay, I mean, that's what it can be used for sure. But it just didn't land. I think it would have probably been better if this show had been set up as like a mockumentary, like The Office, or I think Malcolm in the Middle is the one who did it in the 90s. There was an episode of Scarlet Witch and the Vision that did this. You know, it's like they're going through their days and it's a reality crew following them around. You know, reality camera TV show thing is following them around and recording them. And then they'll have like pieces where they're just in a room being interviewed by the camera crew spliced in, and that's kind of the fourth wall break. Or like a diary section, and that gives us exposition and funny and commentary about what's going on. I think this show should have been much better. I think it would have been much better served if this show structured that way instead of being what we got, which was just kind of like a Deadpool thing where he's going about his life and then he turns and he talks to the fourth wall. Because it's funny when Deadpool does it. It's great when Deadpool does it. And I couldn't tell you why. I think it's just better writing, I guess. I couldn't tell you why specifically it's better when Deadpool does it than when She-Hulk does it. I think it just comes down to writing, where it's just funnier. They just give him better lines because he uses it to comment more on what's going on than about the meta of the story, the meta of the story, the meta of the writing, you know, making comments about why they wrote something the way that they wrote it. I just it just didn't land for me. So I thought the comedy fell flat. There's barely any action in it at all especially for the first 4 or 5 episodes. And here's really what was upsetting. In the first episode, at the end, when Titania comes through the wall and She-Hulk hulks out and like throws her for like 1 second, that was a good way to end the first episode, I thought, because it teased us ready for a fight in the second episode. But then the second episode, it was like a one-punch knockout. Titania walks up to her and Hulk throws her to the side, and then she jumps at her and she punches her once and the fight's over. And it's just not very good. I mean, no one wants to see a one-punch knockout fight. Titania is a villain that could have definitely given She-Hulk a run for her money. And it would have been, we would have gotten to see a little bit more about She-Hulk's powers. Instead, it just was one punch that kind of made Titania look like a wuss. And we're out, and we're on to the next scene. And that was how most of the action sequences were for the first 3 or 4 episodes. We didn't get a lengthy action sequence until, I think it's episode 4 when she's battling demons. And I can't say that I particularly found that to be entertaining either. I mean, it was okay. It's just, I don't know. It's just, we didn't get a really cool action sequence that didn't feel like until much later in the show, which, to be fair, it did improve. I mean, it did, as things went on, it was better. It's just, it wasn't particularly compelling, and it didn't do a good job of showing off She-Hulk's talents, other than just, yeah, I'm super strong. Which we already knew that. She's called She-Hulk. Even if you're not a huge fan of the comics or of the movies, when a chick grows 4 feet and gets shredded, yeah, you know she's strong. It didn't really do anything. So it's not a particularly effective action sequence or show, and it wasn't a particularly good law drama either. And if you're wondering, it's like, well, yeah, I mean, it's a comedy and stuff. it marketed itself as a law show. Lest we forget, the full name of the show is She-Hulk Attorney at Law. The final trailer ended with being her walking away and saying lawyer show. I mean, it is marketed as a law drama / comedy. And there might have been 90 minutes, maybe somewhere between 60 to 90 minutes of runtime. I don't think 90 minutes. I think it's probably closer to like 60, 70 minutes of runtime over the 9 episodes where they're actually doing lawyer stuff. And that's the shame of it too, because for the first 6 episodes or so, the law stuff was by far the best dialogue of the entire series. You got the most compelling character interactions in the courtroom than you got anywhere else. But because there's so little of it, it almost like, we know it's a good thing, but we don't want to spoil it. You know, like they say, too much of a good thing. There was not enough of this good stuff because it was good for brief amounts of time. I mean, it would be her walking in, spouting some legal theory. The judge says, yep, that works, and then walking away. And that's just disappointing. I mean, look at other law shows like Law and Order. Half of the show is dedicated to courtroom drama. I'll tell you a show that, man, and this should tell you how much bad things are. There was a show on Lifetime called Drop Dead Diva in 2009, and that show was really good, at least for law stuff. It was on Lifetime, so there's a little bit too much personal drama going on. It probably went a season or two too long. It probably should have ended a season or two earlier than it did, just for the sake of the story being compelling. But it was not a bad show. And about half of that show was dedicated to the main protagonist being a lawyer and figuring out law stuff and figuring out legal theories and how to argue. And it made the character good. It made the character look smart. It made the character look like she's good at her job. And then the other half of the show was dedicated to her personal life, what was going on behind the scenes. So if you're going to make this a law show, make it a law show. And half the show should have been in the courtroom, and the other half should have been devoted to her personal stuff. Instead, it's like, oh, we forgot. It's almost like they were writing the show, and then they were like, oh, right, she's a lawyer. We should have something about that. And they threw something in, and it was like 2 or 3 minutes of runtime every other episode, and then they left. I mean, it was not compelling enough. And that's a shame, because like I said, those were some of the best scenes. So it's just disappointing that you had something that could have been really good like that, and you just didn't go with it. Now here's where things are going to get a bit incendiary. The other, like I said, it tries to be a comedy, tries to be an action series, tries to be a law show, and it tries to be a story about a strong, empowered woman. And it just didn't work. Because here's the deal. What they made her is they made her strong. Sure. According to a particular definition, where she has like no weaknesses and she doesn't have to work at anything because, or rather, she barely has to work at anything because she's just that good. And that's not compelling. When you add on top that she's basically just good at everything. Now, don't get me wrong, there were some setbacks. She had some obstacles that she had to overcome, but they were largely limited. They were like 5 minutes of screen time, and then she got it figured out. It's over. She doesn't have those obstacles anymore. That's not super compelling. Strength is not necessarily the absence of weakness. It is the overcoming of that weakness, of building yourself up. And so when you have someone that's just immediately good at everything, it makes it hard for us to empathize. It makes it hard for us to root for them. It makes it hard for us to be like, oh, when is she gonna, how is she gonna, it's instead of how is she going to overcome this, it's when's she gonna overcome this so we can get to the next scene. Because that's what it felt like. On top of that, she is almost wholly unlikable for the first 6 episodes. This has been harped on. But I'm going to address it here because it is understandable why people were upset by this. In the first episode, when Banner, Hulk, Bruce Banner determines that, or helping her with her powers and everything, and he's like, oh, you're just you can just control your anger like that, you're just in control right now. And her response is, yeah, because I have to do it infinitely more than you do. And the reason she says that is like, I have to do it every time that a male, coworker tries to explain my job to me. I have to do it every time someone, cat calls me in the street. It's like a couple different things. And here's the deal. I don't know what it's like to be catcalled in the street. I can guess that it is annoying. I can't understand, how someone would feel like that if that was a daily thing. I'm sure it would be annoying, but that's only a guess. I can't actually fully understand that. So sure, that amount of trauma, chronic trauma, sure, okay. I can understand how that would be frustrating and annoying, that you'd have to maintain your control of your anger. A male coworker telling you explaining how to do your job to you. People do that. It's not just males; females do that every once in a while, and it can be annoying. I'm sure it happens much more often to females than it does to males. I'm sure that is true. But here's the deal. You are using that as an explanation for how you can control your anger because you, quote, do it infinitely more than Bruce Banner. Bruce Banner, a guy whose dad beat him and his mom, who became the Hulk not by a bomb going off, a particularly traumatic event, where he then had to run away from the woman that he loved because that woman's father-in-law was chasing him with the full might of the U.S. Army. He had to go live in South America. He went from a esteemed doctor of science to going to living in South America, where he was working in a cola bottling factory, where he was violently picked on by his coworkers, and he always had to worry about his blood accidentally getting into it because it would legitimately kill someone. Then he comes back to the States, where he is used, and let's face it, it was in Age of Ultron, he was used for his Hulk ability. He was then sent into space, where he spent 2 years not being himself, but on an alien planet where he was the Hulk just all the time. Then he comes back to reality, and he's just completely out of his element. It's really, you can be frustrated by what happens to you, but when you start minimizing the stuff that happens to others and comparing admittedly frustrating stuff that happens to you, but to actual really traumatic events, like having a dad that beats on you and stuff like that, it kind of disassociates you from the rest of us. Okay, I'm not going to say we're all selfish people from time to time. We all want to play the woe is me act from time to time. But you can't say that person is likable all the time when you do that. It's understandable. Like, imagine if you were standing here, someone rational was standing here, and your friend was saying, "I'm just having a rough day because my dad, was violent towards me and my mom again last night." If they're comfortable enough telling you that, and then your other friend walked up and said, "Oh, I know how you feel. I had a guy catcall me while I walked into work today." Listen, I'm sure the catcalling was annoying, but it does not compare to your friend who was open enough with you to come and say, "Yeah, my dad beat me again last night." So it's right off the bat just makes you not like this character, which is the problem. Because if you're going to have a story about a character and her challenges and her struggles, which, like I said, there were barely any challenges or struggles for the first 6 episodes. You didn't get a real you didn't get a hint that she was upset about anything really until episode 5, And that was just a hint. It wasn't until like episode 7 that she actually explored some of her emotions and acted like a real human being. So if you're going to have this story be all about her, and then you make her wholly unlikable, how is it that we're supposed to actually care about anything she's going through? Because in all our minds, all we're thinking is, man, she sucks. So it's just, she just walked around with a chip on her shoulder for the first 6 episodes, and it just wasn't very good. Now, like I said, at like the episode 7, 8, and 9, where she actually opens up and talks about some of the stuff and shows that she's a legitimate human being, was not bad. That's what the show should have been. You know, that's what the writing should have been. But instead, she just walked around dismissing everyone else's problems and kind of like just commenting about, see how hard my life is. I'm a successful lawyer and all this stuff. So, and just ultimately, the show really didn't have a point. 90% of every episode was just filler. It's just crap that happened. And it didn't really matter to the MCU itself or to the show, to later episodes on in the show, which I'm actually okay with it not, tying in with the MCU. The MCU is this gargantuan thing at this point, and it could have been refreshing to have a show that just said, we're going to be our own thing, and yeah, we're set in the MCU universe, and we'll pull elements in from that, but we're going to do our own thing, and that's fine. But if you're going to say we're going to do our own thing because we're just going to make something good, and then it's not good, then it's like, oh, maybe you should have just stuck with tying into the MCU. The problem is there's just no story. There's no story. Like I said, 90% of every episode is just filler content. There's nothing going on. And then the 10% that was tied into episodes moving forward, the 10% that you probably did need to know in order to watch the next episode or the episode after the next one or something like that. I mean, half of that was wiped away by how they ended the show, which I applaud them for trying something new, right? Like I do. I applaud them for trying to not be the cookie cutter ending that every Marvel product has been for the last 10 years or so. Good for you for attempting that. I'm not, it's one of those things. It's like if you always do the same thing, you'll always get the same result. You have to try new things in order to improve. You have to try new things to go to the next level. And I applaud them for taking that risk. It's not, but just because you tried something new doesn't mean that it's good. That's why they call it taking risk. If they just, if every time that you did something new, it was good just because it was something new, it wouldn't be a risk. It would just be winning. But this, I don't think this was executed very well. So the problem with her popping out into our world and meeting her writers, first of all, I don't think it was as funny as they thought it was going to be. Like, her conversation with the writers and everything just wasn't particularly that great. And her going and meeting Kevin Feige, who's a robot, I can understand why that would be kind of a funny premise. And there was some conversation with Kevin, the robot, that made me chuckle a little bit. I was like, oh, okay, I get what they're going for here. Good for you. But it wasn't laugh out loud hysterical funny. And that's kind of awkward when after the final episode dropped, when Tatiana Maslany is in an interview with, I don't remember which magazine it was. It's like an online publication, I think. And she says, yeah, we really went for big laughs. And there's no big laughs to be found. It's unfortunate. So like I said, I applaud them for doing something new. And here's the thing, in that conversation with Kevin, where she's talking about like how everything's the same, her points are not wrong. She's not wrong that Marvel has a formula that they kind of go through. It's one of their biggest criticisms. But if you know that, and you know that you want to do something new, do something new. Don't write the show like it's going to be the old way, and then in the last episode, at the last minute, you Thanos snap that all away and you say, I want to do something new. I want this ending to end like this. Because then half the like I said, the 10% of the shows that actually did matter moving forward, half of that got wiped away. Half of that doesn't matter anymore. You wiped away the whole point for watching your show. If you're going to do that, just write something new. Just be something different. Don't call yourself out for being the same old, and give us a different ending in the 11th hour. Just write something different. And if you can't, then don't write anything at all. And just let the show not be there. For those of you unfamiliar with the term lampshading was a thing in the like days of theater and whatnot. And the reason it's called lampshading is like something pops in that it's like fourth wall breaking. It's like something pops in that's not supposed to be there. Like someone accidentally damages a set or something while they're in the theater, and someone just goes over there with a lampshade, which is what they used to do, and they would put a lampshade on it, and they'd just be like, pretend that's not there, and people would get a good laugh at it, and then they'd go about the set. And there's ways to do that, right? Like there's a comic storyline where Deadpool kills the Marvel Universe, and he gets frustrated because he's going to kill Logan, Wolverine, and he's like, it wouldn't matter if I killed you because you're such a popular character that the writers would just bring you back in the next issue. And that's kind of funny because that's kind of true, and it works for what it is. It's like lampshading. It's like, why did this happen in a story? Oh, because the story happened to. It's like in horror movies when they make stupid decisions and they go somewhere else and they're like, and they do something dumb. And then you ask yourself, why did they do that? Because if they didn't, the story wouldn't happen. So there's certain things that we as an audience know is going to have to be done just for the fact that a story has to be made. And sometimes writers will poke fun at that and do what they call lampshading, which is to say, yes, we know it's dumb, but stick with us here. The problem is it can be done, it is typically done best in moderation. But there's doing little things like that, like, oh, the boom mic got into the shot and you just want to put a lampshade on the boom mic and pretend like no one saw it. There's little things like that where you're just kind of covering up mistakes. And then there's making fun of the entirety of your show's writing up until that point, which is what this was. It was, we put the Hulk King thing is too much like the villains squaring off against a villain with the same superpowers, which is what Marvel has done in pretty much every movie. The injection to give him Hulk powers smells a lot like the super soldier serum, which is another thing that Marvel has done all the time. But the problem is that was the only thing, those storylines of the Hulk King and her blood having to be given to him and whatnot were the only things linking episodes 1 through 5 with, well, not even 1 through 5, probably 2 through 5, 2 through 6 maybe, with the finale. So if you don't have that, there's no reason to watch those episodes. You could have just watched episode 8 and 9, maybe 7, and called it a day. So when you have an ending that pokes fun at the entirety of your show and then rewrites it and does it all, that's not just lampshading. That's just insulting yourself and your writers and just saying, hey, we suck, but we know we suck. It's like, when people are like, hey, do you want to read this book I wrote? It's not very good. I'm just a modest writer and whatnot. But I really want you to check it out because I tried really hard on it. Don't make fun of yourself. You tried really hard on it. And if people don't like it and they give you honest criticism and you want to improve your work later on, do that. But don't just set yourself up for the fail. And that's kind of what I feel like this show did. It just set the audience up for them to go back and say, yeah, this show wasn't written very well, but we worked really hard on it. And here's an ending. There you go. So it's sad. It was disappointing. I think the show would have been, I was actually really excited for this show. I was really excited when they announced Tatiana Maslany was going to be playing this show. Because if you've never seen Tatiana Maslany in Orphan Black, She's amazing. And in that show, she plays something like 30 different characters. It's incredible. And she brings life to each and every one of them. I was really looking forward to there being a Jennifer Walters persona and a She-Hulk persona, and seeing how these two melded together at the end of it. I would have thought, I thought that if there was no action in the show, or barely any action in the show, and I mean there was barely any action anyway, but better action, like even no action at all, if it was a proper like law drama, that would have been more entertaining. I think the format, it would have been better formatted if it was like a reality television show and they were following her as she came to grips with these new powers, and then you could have sat her down in front of the camera and let her comment about stuff instead of doing the fourth wall breaks, which just didn't land. I think there were a half a dozen different ways to make this show entertaining and worth watching, and they just didn't. And they went with the, it's good, we know that it's not what you're used to, but we want you to like it specifically for that reason, instead of the, it's not what you're used to, but it's really good, and I think you'll appreciate it if you understand that, which is what we could have gotten with the other the other format changes or whatnot. But it's just, instead we just got something that, a wholly unlikable character with no plot, no comedy, and no action. So don't watch this. If you're wondering what score I'm going to give it, just for the sake of the final 3 episodes, which it did improve. Well, really episodes 7 and 8, which it did kind of improve. I'm gonna give it a 4 out of 10. It was just disappointing, and like I said, if you genuinely liked it, good for you. I'm glad that you genuinely liked it. I'm glad that you found it entertaining. For the rest of you, though, that if you've listened to my comments and you think you would agree with me, don't watch it. You don't need to. There's nothing that ties into the MCU that you couldn't figure out in like a 2-minute recap video. Here, I'll tell you right now, Hulk's got a kid. There you go. That's the only thing that mattered. Hulk's got a kid. It'll probably set up something like a World War Hulk or a World Breaker Hulk storyline, which I would be excited for. This has nothing to do with the review. I hate how they handled Matt Murdock. Yes, Daredevil is in the show, and I'm sure they'll make an allusion to that when they give him his show. But they kind of ruined him a little bit. He was really jovial and really lighthearted, and he was trying to be kind of like funny and everything. And that's really not Matt Murdock. Matt Murdock has those moments where he can be really charming and really funny with the women that he's with. But by and large, Matt Murdock is kind of a angsty guy. If he's not really a go to Sunday lunch with your family type of guy, and for him to really enjoy it, he would go and he would be charming and he would be pleasant, but there would always be a piece of him where he's just like, I don't belong here. I don't fit in here. This isn't the life that I can really ever enjoy. He's kind of like Batman in that way. Where if you haven't watched it, watch the What Makes Batman Batman video, where I kind of talk. The final point I make in that is that Batman wears Bruce Wayne like a mask. Daredevil kind of wears Matt Murdock like a mask to a certain extent. He goes out there on the streets and beats people up like Daredevil because that's who he is. And then if he goes to like a Sunday brunch with family and everything, it's not going to be, oh yeah, I could see myself giving up my nightlife and doing this full time. No, it's I'm tired. I was out all night doing the thing that I actually do, and I don't know if I really belong here. So I'm kind of worried about how if that's how they're going to treat his character during his like 18 episode season. I'm going to be really sad. I hope that's not what they do. I really do. I hope they give us the edgy kind of, angsty character from the Netflix show, which was really, really good. And that's not to say that he couldn't have character growth where he gets over that angsty side. That's not to say that at all. I think that would be a really good way to end the series. I don't know if they're going to do 1 or 2 seasons for him. I think it'd be a really cool thing, if eventually he's just like comes to understand that he doesn't have to be angry all the time. And that would be cool. But show how he gets there. Don't just make that happen. Because that's not Matt Murdock. At least not yet, anyway. So Anyway, now I'm getting off track, but yeah, 4 out of 10. Don't watch this. It was bad. Watch something else. If you're going to watch 9 episodes of something, go watch Arcane on Netflix, which was really, really good. But I'm going to end it here. If you like this video, give it a like. It really, sacrifice a like to the YouTube algorithm god. Subscribe to the channel if you watch something else of mine and you really like it. If you like 2 videos in a row, that means you probably should subscribe because but yeah, this was disheartening. I'm going to end it here. Bye, y'all. Have a good day.